Let's start with prayer. Father, I thank you for the time that we have. I pray that I would be clear and that everybody watching would understand quickly and easily because this is for your work in your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you, Mark. As Mark said, my name is John Wood, and I am involved with the Tech Advanced Training work that we do, and I'm also involved with the help desk. And if you have not yet encountered the help desk or used the help desk, we have an email address that you can write to with questions. That is helpdesk at techadvancement.com. We also have a Telegram channel where you can ask questions and get responses more quickly. I think Mark might be about to put that into the chat. But those are a few of the resources that we have. Tech Advance is the branch of Wycliffe Associates that works alongside the others to make sure that their technology works for the translation process. And so that's the focus of our training. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to start by talking about how do we get BTT Writer. I'm hoping that most of you or all of you already have BTT Writer installed on your computer. But sometimes when we get a question and I'll ask people, well, what version of BTT Writer are you using? And they'll say, oh, I'm using some ancient version. Well, I want us to be able to have the newest version. And there's several reasons for that. So if you can see here, I'm on my web browser. I'm using Firefox for this demo. Normally I use a Brave browser. You can use Chromium, you can use Edge, doesn't really matter. And for a web browser, if we click up in this top bar, then we can tell it where we want to go. And I'm going to go to basictranslationtools.org. basictranslationtools.org. And when I go there, I'm going to see that I have the ability to download several programs in several versions. BTT Exchanger is not going to be something we talk about in this training. BTT USFM Converter is something we'll talk about towards the end of the course, one of the last weeks. Or actually, that might be while I'm gone in a couple of weeks. Anyway, we're going to talk about that later. BTT Orature, my friend Moncho is going to be teaching about that later in this course. And today we're looking at BTT Writer. On this page, you can see immediately that the current version of BTT Writer is version 1.4.0. 1.4.0. There is a number here after the plus. That number is actually only correct for the Android version. The Android version is build number 18, but the desktop version for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, it actually has a different build number. So if you download and it's not 18, don't worry. The build number is different from Android to desktop. So when you come here, you just select the version that you want. For most of you, that's going to be the 64-bit version of Windows. You can see there's a little 64 down in the corner of the Windows icon here. And when you click download, that'll download the installer for that. There's only one version currently available for Mac OS, and there's one version available for Linux as well. And on our YouTube channel, we have videos talking about how to install that. Okay, so that's where we get BTT Writer. Let me just make sure that I'm going to follow the program here. So after we download and install BTT Writer, when we first start it, it's going to look like this. And even before I've logged in, I can check the version of BTT Writer that I have. And so right here, I can see that this is version 1.4.0. So that is the current version. And that'll help me make sure that if I have a problem, it's not because I'm using an older version of BTT Writer. For some of you on Windows, you're going to want to make sure that when you upgrade, you uninstall BTT Writer first and then install the new version. We've seen some problems if you just install over the top. Okay, and so once we have BTT Writer installed and running, and I'm on the current version, we have to log in. And we can either log in to a local user, that's this bottom option here, or we can log into the server, which is Wax, which is what Chuck showed you last week. Now, if you don't have a Wax account, you can use this button to create a server account in BTT Writer. And all that does is open up the web browser that Chuck showed you last week for creating a server account on Wax. And so I'm not going to go through that. That was last week's lesson. If you don't have a server account, it's going to be a little bit more difficult this week, but you can go back and you can watch the video from last week and catch up. I'm going to start by using a local user profile. And the reason I'm going to do this is two things. Number one, I want you to know that everything that I'm doing can be done without a server account. Everything that we're talking about today, you don't need to have a server account. And most of it, you don't need the internet. And so if you're in a situation where you can't create a BTT Writer or Wax account, you can't connect to the internet, it's okay. You can still use BTT Writer to do this work. The second thing we're going to talk about, full name or pseudonym. When you log into BTT Writer, you're going to be using normally your username on Wax. And of course, that's for the server login. If we're logging in as a local user, if you have a Wax account, you can still use your Wax server name. And when you do that, then any changes that you make will be recorded under the same name. Some of you might be working in a place where it's dangerous for people to know your name. And that's why we have the pseudonym option there. If it's dangerous for people to know your name, you can use a pseudonym to say, instead of my name, everything that I do is going to be under this name. That's something that you need to communicate with the rest of the translation team so that they know who, in this case, Mighty Writer is. But it's something that you might want to do if you're in a place where it's dangerous to do this translation work. So I'm going to use the name temp. And one of the reasons that I'm going to use a name that's not the same as my server name is when I look up at the top here, I can see immediately that I'm not logged into the server because that's not my name. So that's why I'm doing that this way myself this time. So after we agree to the license agreement and the translation guidelines and the statement of faith, when we do the in-person training, we're going to talk about those three things more. But right now, I'm going to skip past that. Did you have a question, Prosper?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I'm going to agree to those things. And here I am in my BTT Writer. And so once I'm in BTT Writer, I'm going to see this, we call this the home screen. If you have any translation projects, they'll be shown here. And we still have access to the settings over here where I can change the behavior of BTT Writer. one of the changes that I'm really excited about is you can now change the language that BTT Writer shows in. And there's actually a bug on my operating system that it's difficult for me to change the interface language. If you're using Windows or you're using Mac OS, this will work. But right now on Linux, if I click here, I'm not going to be able to change this from English. But that's something that I'm very excited about. I helped to work on that. And so now it's available in French, and we're working on the translations into Portuguese and Spanish and Burmese, I believe. So pretty soon we will have the interface for BTT Writer available in those other languages. If you're interested in having BTT Writer available in an additional language, one of the ones that comes to mind is Hausa. If you'd like to have BTT Writer localized into Hausa, contact me and we can get you set up with our team to help translate that. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to create a new project. There's this green button here that has a plus on it. I'm going to click that. And the first thing that it does is it asks me to choose a target language. Now, you should not have to guess what your target language is. Your target language should be information that you receive from the project manager of the translation project. And they will know not only the language name, but also they will know the code. There are a lot of languages in the world, and some of them have the same name as each other. Now, sometimes that's because they're related, but sometimes languages in completely different parts of the world will have the same name just because those are the syllables that in that language means the names of those languages. And so we want to be very, very careful that we don't just start typing a language name and then just pick something off of the list that looks close. We want to be sure that we're using the code that was given to us by the project manager. And so once we know the code name, we can choose the correct language. So here, Icelandic Sign Language, the code is ICL. I'm just going to put in ICL, and that's the only thing that shows up. Now I know I've got the correct code. So after I pick the target language code, I'm given the choice, do I want to translate the Old Testament or do I want to translate the New Testament? For our example today, I'm going to choose the New Testament. And then I get to choose which book that I'm going to translate. Chuck talked last week about a project. So with these three pieces of information, the language code and the testament that it's in, and then the project, I can define a specific language project. If I go back to the home screen right now, I can see that my 3rd John Icelandic Sign Language project is available. There is one other piece of information that defines this, and that's the type of project. For the training that we're doing, all of the language projects are what we call heart language or mother tongue translations. And so all of that should be the same type, the type text. If you are asked by your BTT Writer to choose a project type, that probably means that in your settings, you have Gateway Language Mode turned on. And I'll just very quickly show what that looks like. So ICL is my code. going to go to the New Testament. Now I'll choose 2 John. And you see it asks me to choose a type. For your translation work, you should not be getting this question. And so I'm just going to go back to home. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to turn Gateway Language Mode off so that all of my projects are of this text type. Okay, so now I have a project. It's distinct from every other project on my machine because it's Icelandic Sign Language, it's 3 John, and it's a regular project. But now I also need to choose a source translation. I'm going to choose a source translation because the translation work needs to be done from something into something else. And so, for example, with those of you in Nigeria, Hausa might be the source language you pick. And when I confirm that, I'm going to be shown here the source in Hausa, and I have over here where I can type my translation. Now, you'll also notice that this does not follow the 8 steps of MAST. I have my source language here, and I can still see it when I'm typing the translation. Next week, we'll be talking about using the 8 MAST steps, and we'll be talking about the settings that you want to put in BTT Writer if you're going to do that. But for right now, we're not going to worry about that. So I've added Hausa. I can also add another source. So I can come down here and I can add French. A lot of you, well, some of you, I guess I don't know how many today, are working in areas where French is a common language, and we can use that as a source. And then hopefully we'll have some people viewing this who are going to be part of our training in Kenya. And for those people, Swahili is actually a good source text. And so I can choose Swahili here as well. And so here you can see the source in Swahili. And I have all 3 of these sources available to me at the same time, and I can switch between them by clicking on the tabs. That brings up something that's very important. We can have up to 3 different source tabs available in BTT Writer. And if you speak more than one language that's available as a source, that can be helpful. Or, for example, in French, we have the ULB, the Unlocked Literal Bible, that we have made available for translation. But there's also the older Louis II translation available. And some people might want to have the Louis II available as well as the French ULB to be able to compare what it says in the 2 translations. The important thing to remember is that every translation is done from only one source text. You cannot translate from 2 texts at the same time because they don't say exactly the same thing. You can translate from one source and compare it with another one to make sure that you're understanding correctly. But you cannot translate from 2 sources at the same time. And so that's something that when you're setting up a project in BTT Writer, make sure you know which the one source is that's the primary source that's being used. Okay, so the question should come up, where do these sources come from? Well, on our website, we maintain a list of all of the source texts that are available. And sometimes those source texts are updated. people are reading through there and they're saying, you know what, it would be better if we said this verse this way instead of the way it is now. And so we make an update so that it will be easier for the translators to understand the correct meaning of that verse. When that happens, we need to update our source texts. So for that, I have to go to the home screen, and then I go to update. And here my choice is update list of available source texts. Now, we don't have to do this very often. The source texts are not updated very often. And every time there's a new version of BTT Writer, the build process for that version of BTT Writer takes all of the source texts as they are at that time and puts them in to the build of BTT Writer. And so when you install BTT Writer, it has a copy of every source text that's available at that time. And so most of the time, you will not have to update the source text. When do you have to update the source text? If the project manager tells you there's an update and I want it for this project, then you can go and you can update. Okay, there's one more thing I want to talk about before we get into the lab time, and that is logging in as your server user into BTT Writer. If you were with us last week or if you watched the video, you'll know that WAX server accounts are created on the WAX website. And if I'm going to sign in to my account on WAX, you can see here it says username or email address. And Chuck talked about how you can only create one WAX account for a particular email address. If that email address is already used, you won't be able to create another account. The reason I'm bringing this up is that in BTT Writer, when I sign in, I can only use my username. I cannot use the email address. And so my email address that is used at WAX is john_wood@wycliffeassociates.org. But if I use that to try to log in to BTT Writer, that's not going to work. Instead, I need my username, and then I need my password. And if I were Chuck, I would be able to type in my password here, but I don't remember my WAX password. And so I use a password manager that keeps track of it for me. And so here's my username, here's my password, and now when I click log in, it will log me into WAX. And you can see that the project that I created, 3rd John Icelandic Sign Language, is still there, even though I wasn't signed into WAX when I created it. And you can also see here that I have my 3 sources, French, Hausa, and Swahili, that I checked, that I added before. Now, if I add a source by mistake, say I don't really speak Hausa, I can click on the X there and it removes it. And now that I have fewer than 3 sources, this little button over here appears to let me add a source again. I can't have more than 3 sources, but if I have fewer than 3, it gives me the option of adding another source text. The last thing I want to say before we get into the lab portion of this is that not every source puts the chunks in the same places. Sometimes a source text, even if it's ULB, which is the Unlocked Literal Bible, and they're all based on the same source, sometimes the chunks are made differently so that a verse is in a different chunk than in the other source. When that happens, you have to be careful that you're checking the project using the source that was used for the translation. And so I actually have a video up on our YouTube channel that I made last week where a project had been finished. It was 100% done, but in BTT Writer it showed at 99%. And the reason was that there was one verse that was present in one version, but in the other version of the source, it was part of a different chunk. And so that's something to be aware of. If that's something that's ever happened to you, you can go to our YouTube channel and look at that video. But just be careful when you add sources that you are paying attention to which source you use. Have an effect. Do you have a question, Jerry? Okay. All right. All right. So now it's time for the lab. And that means that it's time for you to do what I did. So I want you to, if you're logged in to BTT Writer, log out. And you can close BTT Writer. And I want you to start BTT Writer from scratch. So when you've done all of that, you should be looking at this screen right here. If you don't have BTT Writer installed, you can download it from basictranslationtools.org. Now, every once in a while, there's a problem with this website, and you can't get to the translation or the download there. In that case, you can also go to BibleTranslationTools.org. And here there's a tools menu that you can use to get to the writer download. And that link actually takes you to a third place, github.com. And we go to Bible Translation Tools on github.com. And there's our BTT Writer, and we can download from there. The Basic Translation Tools is the easiest way. But if for some reason that's not working, you can go to one of the other two places as well. So hopefully you all have BTT Writer downloaded now, and you have it installed on your computer. So I want you to open it up and get to this screen. And I want you to click on Create Local User Profile. When you create Local User Profile, it's going to ask you for your name or pseudonym. And I could put my full name here. And then I'm going to agree to that. And now when I create a project, let's do something small, Philemon. One of the things that happens when I add my name there is that when I look at the information about that project, it's going to have my name here under translators. So I'm going to go back in there. We'll translate the name of the book. Now when I go back to the home screen, it tells me that John Wood is a translator. Whereas if I had logged in using my Wax account, it would say that J.D. Wood was one of the translators because that's my username on Wax. So has everybody logged in as a local user? Is anybody having trouble with that step? There's a button at the bottom where you can raise your hand if you.
Yeah, I've not been able to have access to basic Bible translation tools.
Okay, when you go to basictranslationtools.org, what happens? What do you see on your screen there?
It's the screen is showing that the problem to have access.
Okay, that could be a limitation on your internet. Can you go to github.com?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so if you go to github.com, then you can go to github.com/Bible-translation-tools. And you should be able to see this screen here. And Prosper, am I correct that you did not have BTT Writer previously?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. I did not have Bible translation tool. But yeah.
Okay. So did you get to this page here, github.com?
I get to it, but it's given me many other websites. App
Okay.
programming software, software development, design software.
So I got directly here by doing github.com/Bible-translation-tools. And that
Okay,
brought me
slash.
right to this page.
Bible translation tools in one word.
With dashes between the words. Can you see this on my
Okay.
screen?
Also, Chuck has posted on the chat the link in github.com/Bible-translation-tools and the
Okay.
rest of BTT Writer.
Yeah, so if you go to the chat in Zoom, there's a link that you can click on that will take you right there. I would talk if you have any tech people that help you with your computer or with your internet to find out why you're being blocked from basictranslationtools.org. That might be a sign of a virus, or it might be a sign of a firewall blocking you on your internet. Is everybody else able to log in with a local account?
No.
Okay. Nana, you're having
Um,
trouble with that?
yeah, because I'm not using laptop.
Uh,
I'm using a phone and it's
you're
not
on a
giving me
phone?
access to. Yes.
Okay. So on a phone, it does look a little bit different. And you would use this top download here with the little Android next to it for your download.
I
Um,
yeah, able to get this one, but I couldn't download.
okay. Well, it may be that your internet isn't strong enough to do that and Zoom at the same time.
I think
So
so.
you can try that maybe after the class also.
Okay.
Anybody else having
I'll do that.
troubles? Obviously, some of our problems are just because of our equipment.
For Prosper, I'm wondering if you can send a screenshot of what he's having to see what we can look into.
He can try that. I'm not sure if the meeting settings are set up properly for screenshots, but certainly in the Telegram channel, that would be something that we could use to help. And let me get the Telegram channel information.
Yeah, and maybe he can share it via the chat as a possibility.
I was just thinking that earlier in the chat, I think you tried to share a picture and it didn't come through, but we can try that. So I'm gonna copy this link. This is the link to our Telegram chat where we can ask and answer all sorts of tech questions. And that's a good place for screenshots if it can't come into the Zoom chat. So Prosper, do you know how to take a screenshot? For the rest of you, Mark has put the link. Okay, here's Prosper's. Okay, so if you go up to the top of this page, Prosper, you're at the bottom of it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, click where it says Tools.
Oh,
And this is Bible in every language. This is a different website, but we can get there from here. Now scroll slowly down. That's right. So we're going to go past BTT Orature, a little bit more down. We're going to go past BTT Recorder, and here's BTT Writer. So click where it says Learn More,
okay.
and then download Writer Desktop. And scroll down a little bit, and you want, oh, back up. We went down too far. All right. So you want the one that says BTT Writer 140543 Win X64, the one below that. That's the one. And so go ahead and click on that to download it. I think you started a download for the other one too, and you could click on your download manager to stop the download of the other version. Your downloads are in that little pie up in your, a little bit below that. Yeah, right there. If you click on that, you'll see your downloads. But it looks like your download's going pretty slowly, so I don't think we're going to
Yeah.
finish before the end of the lab.
It's okay. I think I'm following.
But once that's finished downloading, you'll be able to install. And you can watch this video again later too, to go back and go through all of the steps.
Okay.
So one of the things that you're going to need to know when you're logging in, or when you're answering the quiz later, is the two things that you need to log in on BTT Writer for your Wax account are your username and your password. You cannot
yeah.
use your email address here on BTT Writer. That won't work. And next week, we'll be looking at how we use BTT Writer along with the 8 math steps, but also when we're not doing the 8 math steps. So, yeah, Prosper, since you have the download started, we don't need to download it again. You can close those other tabs. We don't want to download 16 copies of it. Does anybody else have any questions?
Not really.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through these steps again. Here's my translation project. And if I don't have any sources, it'll show me a screen that looks like this. Actually, I guess I need to share my screen again since Prosper has the screen right now. So when I don't have any sources on BTT Writer project, it looks like this. I'm going to click on this icon. It's a folder with a plus and minus on it. Chuck and I always think it looks like a car battery or a truck battery. And then from the list here, I can choose my source text. Or I can type in the language code for the language that I want to use as my source, and it will filter the list for me. One other thing to be aware of, if there was an update available for this book, there would be a little green arrow right next to the check mark that's in a circle. And that little green arrow would show me that there's an update available for that text. Again, that doesn't happen very often, and I would not update the texts unless the project manager asks you to do that. So To log into my server account, I need my username and my password. If I'm logging in on a local account, all I need is some kind of a name that should be something recognizable to the rest of the translation project. Are there any questions about that?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, when you ask us to log out of our BTT writer,
Yes. I'm sorry. I think
relevant to my
the end of the
project,
question was cut off.
I
Can-
say
can
when
you
you
repeat?
ask us to,
Yeah.
yes, but when you ask us to log out of the BTT writer,
Yes. I think we're having connection problems. So afterwards, I wanted you to try logging in as a local user. And I also wanted you then to log back into your server
Yeah.
account.
yes, I lost you earlier.
Okay.
Yes, what I was trying to say is that when you ask us to log out of the BTT writer, so that I then inserted a particular name, BTT writer items that I'm currently working on them. That is the translation I'm currently working on it. Does that mean anyone that gets access to my computer?
Okay. We're having a bad connection. But I think I understand at least part of the question you're asking. And if you can type your question in the chat, then I'll make sure that I have all of it.
All right,
So,
thank you.
as you can see, I logged out and I logged back in to BTT Writer several times. And every project in my BTT Writer is still there. And it doesn't matter if it was created when I was logged in as John Wood on a local account or whether I'm logged in as my server account, all of the projects are visible. And so when you log out of BTT Writer, you are not restricting access to the projects at all. They're freely available to anyone who has access to the computer. Also, if they log in, even if they use a different login, they will have access to those projects. The one thing that you accomplish when you log out of your server account, if you're concerned about people having access to your computer, is that if I log out and then say I log in using a temp account, I cannot upload to Wax anymore. So if you are logged in as your server account on BTT Writer, anyone who opens BTT Writer will be able to upload to your account. If you log out of BTT Writer up here, then they will need to log in using a server account in order to be able to upload. And if they don't know your password, they won't be able to upload to your account. That does bring up another question, which I think it would be good for us to answer here. And that is, what happens if you remember your email address that you used, but you don't remember the username? Well, if you sign in on Wax, your username will be listed right up here. And so since on BTT Writer, I need to log in using my username, if I log in on the website to Wax, that will tell me what my username is, and then I can log in. The other thing, of course, that you can do is you can send a question in Telegram. Hey, John, this is my email address. How do I log in on BTT Writer? What is my username? And I can look it up for you. So I'm going to check the chat right now to see if there was more to the question that I missed. Okay. There's nothing else in the chat for questions.
I'll just send mine now.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so if somebody gets into your computer, they will have full access to everything that's on the computer. All right? But if you've already uploaded it to Wax, and if you log out of your Wax account, they will not be able to adjust anything that is on Wax. They can make changes to your local project. So for example, I have this Kalamse project on my computer here, made by the Kalamse group and Kusube Mark. And I can open that even though I'm not one of those users. And I can come here to Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, and I can change what this says. Okay, so I'm a very bad person. I've made this change to this project, but because they logged out, because I'm not logged in as them, if I upload this, it only goes to my account. It does not go to theirs. And I cannot change what they have already uploaded to Wax.
Okay.
And so that's another good reason for us to upload very, very frequently. Because as soon as we upload it to Wax, it becomes more safe. And then if you're concerned about somebody accessing your computer when you're not there, make sure you log out of your Wax account after you're done uploading. And that will protect you from having somebody upload something that is wrong in your account. That's a very good question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions before we finish here today?
John, this is Marv. If a person comes in, changes something as a local user on my computer, would I then need to re-import or re-get that project from the server to override that? Or what would happen?
That's a good question, Marv. It's probably a longer than 3-minute answer, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
So the first answer is yes. The easiest way to fix that is to download the project from Wax to your computer. And I'm not sure if we have a class set up talking about uploading and downloading.
I think there's one coming.
but one of the things that I love about that is that you don't have to be logged into Wax to download, only to upload. And so
And
if
John,
you-
just to let you know, week 3 is uploading.
okay, week 3 is uploading.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, June 3rd.
June 3rd. So that's
Yeah.
when I'm back. I'll be teaching that class. But the good news, Marv, is that you can also fix it on your computer. The bad news is that it's complicated.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we use with BTT Writer is a system called Git. And Git stores a record of all of the changes that are made to your project. And so we can't do it in BTT Writer, but there are a lot of other tools available to work with Git that will allow you to back up to before they made those changes. And so there are ways to fix that. It's a more complicated subject, and it might be a situation where you want to export the project as a TStudio file and send it to me, and I can back it up and make those changes for you. But the good news is that those changes it is possible to reverse them.
Okay.
The other thing to be aware of is the best solution to this is to make sure that you keep your computer secure, and especially that you have a password on your computer that is a secure password. If you can open your computer and just start using it without putting in a password, that is not secure.
Okay.
And so on my computer, I have a password. Let's see here. My password on my computer is 16 characters long. And I have uppercase and lowercase. I have numbers. I have symbols. And so it's not a simple password. And so it helps to make my computer more secure. So that's the best way for you to protect your projects from having people change them when you're not around. Okay, Mark has been busily adding links in the chat. Remember to go to ehadi.org/zoom-tech-training for the form for this week so that you can sign up your attendance. And also, after you've had a chance to look at all of the material, make sure you can answer the questions correctly. He's also got a link in there for our YouTube channel, Mass Tech Talk, or yeah, he just grabbed the screen there and I lost it. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. Yeah, Mass Tech Talk 1916 is our channel on YouTube, and the Zoom videos are there as well as that most recent video, checking for a missing verse, where if you use 2 different sources, sometimes it won't show your progress correctly. So also, I had pasted in the link to our Telegram channel. That's the fastest way to get answers to your questions. And that information is also available on our website, techadvancement.com. So thank you all for watching. Whether you were here live, we appreciate those of you who were able to be here at the time, and especially the questions. If you were not able to be here, but you're watching this on the recording, thank you for that as well. And I hope to see many of you when we do the in-person training in August.